Okay. There's all kinds of automations and all the really cool stuff to help you there. But the real salesmanship comes in by building relationship, right? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's building the relationships, and there are individuals who know how to build relationships, and there are people that just don't know how to build relationships, and that's fine because every organization needs a little bit of both. Like,
Are you tired of working more for less profits in your home service business? What if I could show you $100,000 in hidden annual profits in your business in less than 3 minutes? Would you be interested? And not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend guaranteed. Just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com to see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I've got Whitney Stowell with us today, and we are going to get into some deep stuff because that's what we do. That's Sharpen the Spear. We do some really great conversations here. This will be no exception. Whitney, as the STS tradition is, no one knows Whitney better than Whitney. So Whitney, bring us up to speed, little backstory, bring us up to what we're going to get into today, then we'll tear into the conversation.
hey, Richard, really appreciate you having me on your show today. So my name is Whitney Stowell. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called CribWorks, which is a sales and business development management consulting firm. So we go in, help companies build their sales pipelines, account management plans, help them be able to position themselves to win more business. So a little bit about me: born and raised on a farm in Western Maine, eventually moved down to DC, worked on Capitol Hill, and then eventually moved over to working for a couple defense contractors, really learning how to win more business, learning how to build relationships, building trust within your clients, how to win new clients. And so I did that, so I did that for a variety of large and small and even startups, and then eventually started my own company. And so here we are.
That's awesome. Excellent. Why this is going to be so good, because there's no business that's immune to the effect of sales. Okay. This is the beautiful thing. You're in a good place. Okay. It's a good business because you can probably help anybody, right? Anyone in business needs help with sales. I got pretty good at it, really good at it. I started helping others as well because that's our economic engine. Sales is the economic engine, right, of the business. When I work with companies, and you can probably 10x all my stories, okay, but you get in there and what would seem so obvious just isn't, like so many things in business. Sales is one of those things, okay? And we're going to get into all the different aspects of it because, I talk to people and they give you you ask what's their closing rate or what are they doing, and they tell you it's 90%. And you're like, 90%? You close 90% of all? Okay. And you know what have you dig into that and you find out it's 9%. Okay. It's like, no, not what you think. What's the real number? So we'll get into that kind of stuff too. But when you come in, let's just start right at that point, Whitney. Let's say you're going into a business. They need your help. They have sales, but they're struggling. Meaning that the owner, a lot of times, like, I know we can do more. And usually the owner can close more because he's so intimate with the product, the features, the benefits. He kind of can really talk. He probably does too much talking anyways, but he tends to get the job done because it's his deal. That's not duplicatable, right? So that's just not a duplicatable thing, nor should it be, because it's really not good. It takes too much time, right? There's no process. It's still a little bit inconsistent and everything else. So kind of let's start with kind of your analysis when you come into a business. What are you seeing? What are you looking for?
Sure. So I think that's a great question. It's what do you want to do initially? And when I'm talking to, say, a business, it doesn't matter if it's large, like it's a multi-million, 100 million, or even it's a one-person company. You kind of want to listen and hear what they're saying, listen to their body language, see how they operate first. But if we want to go in, we want to sit down. The first thing I do is I actually will reach out before I sit down with them, talk about their infrastructure, talk about how they respond to clients, to their current clients. And first thing I always do is I reach out on LinkedIn, I reach out on their social media, I reach out on their website, because I want to see how quickly they get back to me if I'm, say, if I'm interested in a deal. And the reason I do that is your website is always going to be your foundation on if a salesperson leaves or an account manager leaves, that is always the backup for somebody to reach out to you. So I just want to see what your turnaround time is, like how quickly you get back to them. If I leave a phone, if I call the office, how quickly does it take to turn around? So that's always something I do up front first, just to really see how long it takes. So that's the first thing I do. But I don't tell them I'm doing it because I just want to see what their reaction is.
Yeah, I think that's great because you need real-time data because, and I always tell people, and I mean this in a loving way, okay, all of us owners have a lot of ego, okay,
Yeah.
and most of us have not tamed it. It took me 20 years to tame mine, okay, so we're going to inflate the things we say. Or we're going to think we're faster than we are. We're going to, oh, I know we should, but they're not really checking it. And I think that kind of blind search, that incognito, if you will, and go through that is really, really important because that's the real world.
It is.
Whether someone's having a bad day at the office or you've got everything fully automated and it's pretty flawless, but what is that experience for the customer? And that way, at least you can go in listening for the right things, right? When you're asking these questions, what do you think it is and everything else? Well, here's my experience. I can see you, Whitney, pulling out the book. Well, here's my experience on your
Right. No,
website.
it's
You know,
completely
yeah,
new. And say, hey, we're going to sit down in 2 weeks. So I'm going to send an email like, hey, I'm a member, say you're doing business with, say whether it's an enterprise sales job at a bank or you're doing work with the Army Corps of Engineers. Like, hey, I'm an account manager and I focus on this. I'm going to wait those 2 weeks and then I'm going to come in. No one got back to me and it's sitting in their inbox. Like, all right, well, I know one immediate pain point that's in our control. That is an easy fix. It does not cost any money. Let's get the small problems out of the way. Some of the pain points are we need to get more business in. We need to get in front of the customer more. It's like, great. Yeah, those are easy pain points, but I also want to know like what the customer experience is because again, it's like we're in the relationship business. We're in building the trust. So how do we make sure we can always have a strong trust and control the things we can't control? So that's the number one thing I always start with before I even go in and sit down with a customer.
I think you're exactly right, Whitney. And I have to do the same thing. It's the little things. It's the first call, what happens next, all the way through. Whether you want to call it the funnel or whatever you want to call it, it has to be seamless.
Yes.
Okay. You want big clients, but guess what? They're not going to tolerate.
They're not going to tolerate like your inconsistency. They're not going to tolerate, well, I
Ex-
waited 2 weeks. I can understand they did it at 5 o'clock and you don't get to it until Monday. Unless your business is operating on a 24-hour call center. It all depends on the aspect of your business. But if it's been sitting there for weeks and weeks and you didn't answer it, that is technically on you.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
can argue with
Yeah. So,
marketing and sales on that.
and since I can't fire myself, I have to talk to the sales manager, but you're exactly right. Those things. And I do that a lot with companies that come in and we look at the same thing. It's like, again, you want these big customers and you want more customers, but you've already lost a ton of customers. Those customers you want, you already had, but you dropped the ball because your system isn't seamless. So
Yes.
that's a really good starting point. Really, really good starting point. Do you find it difficult for that? Again, when you've done it, you kind of think it's obvious. Do you get a lot of pushback on that at all?
100%.
When
Because
really
they think
you
it's
do?
flawless. And I almost want to go to the point. It's like, you want to bet on it. It's like, I'll bet you. Like, it's not gonna. You see it because they are so far involved in it. They've been part of the business, even they stood up the business, and they are so down in the weeds. It's important to have a fresh eyes on your business, on your sales, because that's what a lot of customers are, especially if they're new accounts. Even existing accounts sometimes do not know all the different intricacies and even all the solutions that you sell. Fresh eyes are basically the eyes of the customer too, but we're there to help improve how you're viewed and how you can help sell more to your customer too. So that's
Yeah,
important.
it is, because I think, it's comfort. As long as
Mhm.
you get in, you get going and you're doing okay, right? But you get comfortable and people kind of get it's rote to them, right? They're going to do this and this, and they do this. They kind of forget upsells, downsells, cross sells. That's not quite important. They just kind of move them along, And I think another thing, and you can talk to us about this too, what I try to explain to a lot of my business owners is that first call, wherever you get, whether it's on the web, it's on a literal phone call, whatever that is, the next steps. These are people who, again, if it's new business, right, they're testing the company from that standpoint, right? And we have to remember we need those outside eyes to come in once in a while and see that process. Give it a check. Say, you know what, you're missing one little thing here. I'm seeing a drop off on the third part of this process, right? Through the third step in the funnel seems to be kind of broken. You've lost some people here you shouldn't be losing, right? So we start to look at that stuff and say, okay, well, how do we fix this? Again, it's the not so pretty stuff. It's not the glorious stuff. It's this little mechanical things that have to be done in the sales process. But at the same time, once they get through that, now we get into kind of the meat, right? And you've used one of my favorite words a few times, and that's relationship. Okay. And that's what sales is. Okay. There's all kinds of automations and all the really cool stuff to help you there. But the real salesmanship comes in by building relationship, right? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's building the relationships, and there are individuals who know how to build relationships, and there are people that just don't know how to build relationships, and that's fine because every organization needs a little bit of both. Like if you're on a sports team, if you're playing basketball, you need people who know how to shoot, you need people who know how to pass, and people who know how to block. But you don't always have that individual who knows how to play every single position. And if they do, they're going to get burned out. And so you kind of have to as a leader, you need to be able to make sure you have the right kind of team to be able to be assembled. So, but I think relationships are built over time, and there's trust that's built over time. It is not a turnkey type environment. Because if the customer really wanted your solution, they will tell you that. It's either they don't have any other options and there's an immediate need at that moment. So, and a lot of customers nowadays, they can choose whoever they want. So you have to build and build and build. I mean, I've been working with some for years. I am still building their trust. Everybody's different. But the other aspect of building the relationship is it's a two-way street. I think people really forget about that there's transactional relationships and there's actually relationships that you
Yes.
build. And a lot of people only talk about transactional where it's one way where like, hey, you're only going to call when you need something. And that's how you burn relationships. The trust and the relationship, when it's two-way, you call, you give a suggestion, you talk about how they can improve, and it's vice versa. So I think that's what everybody needs to work on.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think what they don't understand, what a lot of people like I'm glad you used the word transactional. We're pretty dialed in here, Whitney. You and I
Yeah,
are
yeah,
thinking the same.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
tracking.
there.
I'm tracking.
Yeah, the transactional. There's a place for, right, and those are what we call our 1 to 3% of buyers who want to buy now,
Mhm.
and that's only 1 to 3%. So 97% of the other buyers, maybe even higher, are not going to buy now.
Not
This
at
is
all.
what the relationship, right? That what was known, know, like, and trust, right? So the important thing, what I try to tell businesses or people, business owners, is like one of the questions I ask, you probably do the same thing, is what is your sales cycle? Okay,
I
ring, ring,
absolutely do.
ring, ring. Here's the phone call. First thing, here they inquire on the website. When do they actually purchase? And I'm not talking about the 1 to 3%. I'm talking about the 97%. When is it? 3 days? Is it 21.4 days? My best clients have it broken like it's 21.7 days. They know exactly when that call. That's how well they track it. And they understand that's the cycle. So when you have 5 guys on your sales team,
Mhm.
okay, and they understand there's almost 3 weeks till the complete sales cycle is done. Okay. Well, guess what you got to learn to do? You talk about filling a pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay. You can't talk to one person for 3 weeks, get paid, then start over again. Okay.
Right.
You got to understand, right, that this is ongoing with 10, 15, 20 clients at a time to fill that pipeline. And I always found that people don't really know their sales cycle. So
A lot of
I
them, yeah, a lot of them don't. Oh, sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
yeah. No, I want to hear, I was just going to say, give me your feedback on that, because I want to kind of dive into that, because it's a really undervalued metric. And that's why I think people, they have an undervalue on it. It's highly valuable, but talk about why they undervalue it, and then why, when you don't, what's the difference?
So it's just like when you go into a client, and like I said, I always reach out online to figure out, hey, can they get back to me online? But when I also go in, I ask some of the very generic questions, like what is your sales cycle? How well do you know it? Do you have a lead coming in? Are you doing a demo? Are you currently doing a demo? Like walk me through it, because I want to know how well you know it, what your sales cycle is set up. Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 9 stages? Like, what are the metrics that you have in order to move an opportunity through each stage? Are you allowed to do it, or does it have to go up to a higher level, somebody in your leadership to sign off to go to the next stage? And, how are you vetting these opportunities? What's the probability of when? Getting more structure behind every deal, because I think that is very critical, because a lead can come in, say it's a $100,000 deal, but as you learn more from the customer, that deal can actually grow up to, say, $250,000. Where's the probability of win? Where's the competitor? Where do we stand? Where do we understand the decision maker? Do they even like us? Do they even know who we are? So there's a lot of structure that goes into the sales process, but I know it, but I want to make sure they know it. Instead, they're just like, yeah, I just got to pump up the pipeline, so it looks like I know what I'm doing. So those are questions I ask, because I know where some of the gaps are, is how well do they actually know the customer? That is a simple exercise I always kind of go through. Is they don't know the sales process, they just want to start pumping out proposals, you're going to have a huge drop in your win rate. And so I always want to focus on, like, how well they know the customers, and that's where the sales process breaks.
Yeah, exactly. It's really important that they do know, because when they don't know every stage, okay, they're not setting up for the next stage. They're not overcoming objections. These stages are there to overcome objections during the process normally, right? Because if you really know all your stages, you're also going to know the outcomes of each stage, right? Where it's going to go. I did a flow chart. I did a sales thing for, I guess, for roofers. So we have roofers in construction. I'm like, okay, so I built a flow chart on the sales process. I had 33 steps.
Wow.
Okay, we're selling a roof. Okay, but I'm showing first call, and like you see, and if it says this, it goes here, and from here you got an arrow goes here. When it goes here, it goes back into here, and you get done. And this is all the way till the job is finished, right? Because you're not done selling until even after the job. We're doing things. Here's a gift. Here's this. For the last one's to give. So yeah, so we really had, you can look and go, oh, wow, that's a lot.
Did you
But
ask
now
them
you
to
can.
do it? Did you ask them to do it, or did you do it for them?
I created the flow chart. I created it because I'm out selling, and I'm like, here's all my steps. Okay. Because I'm the best closer. So what I do, and I'm like, here's what I do, and how do I improve it? Because that's how I improve. I got to, just like, and this is odd, when I do podcasts, I listen to every podcast I do, either as a guest or as a host. I always listen to it after the fact, right? Because I want to learn. Okay, don't say that. That one, okay, we had a little problem there. Maybe don't throw your brother under the bus like that. He may hear this someday, stuff like that, so I listen to this so I can get better. I do the same with the sales process, but now they have a visual. I really like that aspect, because I build presentations and everything else for people. And I found that to be real effective. So a lot of my clients, I mail them this poster. I'm like, here, just throw this up on the wall, just to let people know selling isn't a handshake and hopefully they write you a check.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It's important. So if we jump back to the relational aspect and the sales cycle, let's combine those two, because I want you to kind of describe when people hear relational, it's like a lot of terms. It can be kind of ambiguous. Like, what does that actually mean in your mind when you're building a relationship? And we know trust is attached to that, right? That's our outcome. Building a relationship really is the outcome's trust, right? Isn't that, you agree?
I agree 100%. Yes.
Yeah. So, but what does that look like to you? Let's say we have a 2-week sales cycle. There's 14.3 days, okay, of a sales cycle, and you're going to build a relationship in there. Give us some high points, just on kind of what that would look like if someone was actually developing that, regardless of the product or service, right? Just in general.
So I think if you have 2 weeks to build that trust, it's in a 2 week, you need to know immediately what their needs are off the back and how can you understand what they are as quickly as possible. Because if they're moving that quickly, and they don't like their current supplier or whatever they're buying from, how do you differentiate yourself and how can you understand that quickly? So I think you really need to hit the needs, and you can't sugarcoat it depending on who they are, but you need to actually get a professional approach to this. But you need to build a relationship, ask them who they are, how they get into this, industry, whatever it might be, but build a professional relationship and don't just talk about, hey, I've got this product, here's what I can do for you. Like, build them on a personal level too, and then it can actually start to take off. And I think some people just want to talk numbers, talk shop, and then move on. They can find that anywhere. They want to actually build a professional relationship with you.
Yeah, that's great. So here's a little takeaway for everyone too. What you just described, what you need to know is where your competition drops the ball.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know where your competition drops the ball, because that's going to be one of your differentiators. You know your customer's pain already. This potential sales client, this client you already should know their pain point. Yes, you're going to ask them, you're going to bring it out, you're going to tell me more, dig into it, and really let them know you understand it. But you need to know it before you ask them. It's kind of like when you're a lawyer, you never ask a question you don't know the answer to.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
kind of that. Like in this sense, you want to kind of be, if you're dealing in that way, right? You understand if you're trying to get clients who are in a certain industry and you understand that they're getting it from A, B, or C, you got to know A, B, and C. What are they doing? Why are you different?
Absolutely.
And differentiation. Yeah.
And
I always find differentiation isn't features. It's really a benefit aspect, right?
It is. And I think another part of that, especially on the 2 week, if you're really operating on a tight 2 week cycle, it's you need to be incredibly accessible, because, that's one of them. But also, if you know whoever that individual is you're trying to get to meet, can you get an introduction to them? Can you get a referral to them? Because right now the guards are going to be incredibly high right now, but how can you lower those guards and get into a professional, like I said, a professional approach? So if you know someone who knows the people making the decision, you need to get an introduction to them. So that's where LinkedIn, you very easily do referrals into them. If you know someone who knows that person, that is what you need to take advantage of to get in there as professionally as possible. Because other than that, cold, it's going to take more time to get in.
Yeah, you're right. That referral, that nod, getting a nod from someone. Okay, that's the door opener. Like, it doesn't really get any better than that. Especially in like you said, a tight sales cycle is really important, because a referral, and I say this a lot, but there's 3 people involved, right? There's me, the salesman. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's my customer, my current client, and there's a potential client, and if I want my customer to refer me to my potential client, their name is what's at risk. My name's not at risk. The potential client's not at risk, because if they refer me and I do a bad job, okay, for this client, well, the client might not like me, but my customer, the person he refers, not going to be liking them. They tell people, man, they may be having dinner together, or their wives get together. You know what I mean? Like, and now they hate him because you sent this clown who didn't deliver what you said he'd deliver, right? So I always want to emphasize that for people, but I love that you're talking about the referral aspect. This is probably, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, on the longer sales cycles. I mean, it's always a good thing to get a referral, but that's probably where you really can nurture a relationship, right? Using that technique.
Right, but you're always working towards it, because if you're already engaged with a customer, you're going to have your ear to the ground. And if you're selling one solution, say you're selling roofing, you're going to hear certain words out of the customer's mouth. They're going to have pain points and other probably solutions that you're not going to be able to solve for them. So that's not where should cut off your hearing, but you can also be able to advocate and say, hey, like, what are you looking to solve here? Because then you're not just thinking about yourself. You're thinking about, how do I accomplish the customer's goals, and you get in deeper with them. And then you can also provide recommendations, and you can refer out to other people. But then you can say, hey, I do know somebody, because then you can actually open the door to people who might be able to do that. And that helps you with your referral network. So building your referral network is incredibly important, because you're helping out your customer, and they can actually in the future refer business for you too.
Yeah, we call it strategic alliances. So, and you used a good example. So if I'm a roofer, you're on a home. A lot of things are wrong with a home. A lot of things, people put a lot of money into their home. So there's a lot, and maybe you do siding and windows, or you do just roofing and gutters, and someone else does that, and you can refer them, because it's going to go both directions, right? So once you build those alliances, you can have a confident referral to bring them in. So now the trust of your client that you're doing the roof for, let's say, now has more confidence in you, right? Next time you bring something up, or, hey, we're going to work on the next thing, lifetime profitable value. What else do you have? They're going to be more apt to listen to you. You're going to be able to stay front of mind with these people because you did give them that good referral. They did a great job for them. They're going to call you when they need something first. Do you know someone? Right? And that's what you want. Yeah, they're not calling you for your work, but they're calling you because you gave a great referral and they want to get another great referral, right? But who's front of mind? You, right? That's key, because you might have something new you want to introduce them. Guess who's going to take the call? That client. And it's
Yeah,
really going to
exactly.
help you move your process along. That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and you can continue to build on that, because you know that the word of mouth is going to spread very quickly, but you become that trusted advisor within that network and that individual or that company, and then your name can get passed wherever it might go. But that is something that's a branding aspect for you, that you are there, and other companies will recognize that as well, and that quality goes with that, execution goes with that, multiple different levels. So they want to make sure that, hey, if you have another job where you need a strategic alliance, they know they have to bring their A game with you, because they can get potential work out of it too. But they also need to make sure you bring them in as well. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, it's really important. It's one arm. It's not the only thing. You don't want, and I like to get your feedback on this, Whitney, is I have clients and they're all at different levels of their business, right? And a lot of guys are in construction, remodeling, things like that. It's a lot of referrals. Okay.
Yes.
A lot of referrals from happy customers, right? Now you can build I'm air quote, good business on referrals. Okay. You're not going to build the great business just on referrals, just because it's a numbers thing, right? So you're going to have these other avenues, these other funnels, if you will, to bring in clients. But in the beginning, a real strong foundation is referrals. Would you agree with that?
I 100% agree with you on that. It's a referral business.
So on that, let me ask you if I'm going to talk about estimates and presentations. Okay.
Sure.
So I'll take you through a little scenario. So you're going to look at whatever you do. We'll stay in the services business, right? Go, and they need windows, siding, and a roof. They need all three things, right? So great. I'll work up a number for you, whatever that looks like, whether you can do it on site, you got to come back. I have a policy. I'll call it a policy with my clients, that we never email an estimate. We never call them with a number and tell them how much something is going to be. Okay. I am a firm believer, and I've proven it with numbers, that it's an in-person presentation. Okay. And the reason why is people cannot attach value to a number. If I send them an estimate, they're looking at one number. That's the bottom number that says it's $63,752. Okay. They don't even, like, they kind of know what you're going to do, but they don't know why it's that much money. But John down the street gave one for, 58,000. So they're going with him. because the only thing they're comparing is the two numbers. So what's your opinion on, whether it's tablet presentations, estimate presentations, in person, where do you attach value to that? Are you in agreement with this? Is that an all the time? Are there exceptions? How does that work in your mind?
Well, I think the number one exception, if you're doing state and local work or federal work, I think there's a little difference to that because because I think that's just something to we put an asterisk on that one. But I
Yep,
think it goes
gotcha.
back.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. So, but if you're looking at, say, it's a private job, you're doing it to a company that's building a house. I think the value of the presentation is you set it up front with the customer and really having a key understanding of what they're looking for, best value. And if they are really, looking for the lowest cost, and if that's all they're really looking for, maybe they're looking to get this thing built the quickest. A lot of that understanding is, all right, well, the lead times on timber right now, it's not the best. You're going to push your estimators a lot harder because you got to do a quicker turnaround and, whatever it might be. Where you're going to get the windows. There's so much that gets wrapped into it. So setting the expectation up front, I think it's critical so the owners really have an understanding of it. But doing everything, I'm definitely a very much a value believer in doing the presentation, together. Because sometimes all people are going to do is they're going to look at the price. That's all they're going to do. And that's all you can do, move on. But if the variation in two prices is minimal, they're going to look at what am I going to get out of it? Everybody wants quality work, especially if you're building a house. You want quality. You don't want, cheap products that are being put into a house because you're really going to have to deal with maintenance. You're going to have to deal with replacements, especially if you're in an area that's got, prone to storms, weather issues. I grew up in Western Maine where we get bad weather all the time. But
Right.
quality is paramount. I think I think presentation, how you deliver it and what you wrap into it could win. Hopefully that
I agree. Yeah, I think what people don't get is they get busy and I got all these jobs and they're just sending estimates out, right? And I try to explain to them, well, what you're going to do, you're going to become a professional estimate writer.
Yeah.
Because you're going to lose so many jobs. Okay. You're going to get 1 out of 10. Okay. When you should be getting 6 out of 10. Right. So that's the point. And I remember I was at a seminar talking to a guy, I've been doing it for 10 years, 12 years. He's up at 10:30 at night and he's writing his estimates and sending them to people, emailing. And he goes, well, I have 16 estimates. You know how to do. I'm like, okay, 16. Well, that's a lot of estimates.
Yeah.
I said, are these all ideal customers? Are these people? No, a lot of them don't even want to. Well, why are you even doing the estimate?
Yeah.
If you know they're not your customers.
Yeah, they're just trying to use a
Right.
number to justify the other bid.
Right. That's all. I'm like, it's not your ideal customer. It's not even really what you're taking it because you think, oh, okay, I can make a little more money. And we're really trying to hone them in from a sales standpoint is really your sales can get improved if you really understand who your client is. We call it the ICP, the ideal client profile. I took one remodeler from average, he do kitchens and baths, average $43,000 a kitchen. That was his average when I started with him. I'm like, he does phenomenal work. Okay, that is always one caveat. You got to do good work. So, but I make that as an assumption. You do really good work. In less than a year, when we defined his ideal client, and I'm looking at his work going, why are you doing that for them? They don't deserve your work. They're not your ideal client. We changed that. Now his average in about just over a year, his average kitchen price was $93,000.
Good.
Okay. Because we understood who we need to serve. Who's going to value what we do the most? I said, because the people at 43 did not value what you were giving them. You could have given them Formica and they would have been just as happy. Okay. Because they were thinking about the money. Right. But now that's a whole deal. And we started doing less work, fewer jobs at higher numbers. The margins are higher. Your profits are higher, your real net profit, and you're not trying to run 10 jobs at a time. Right. But now when you go into that sales process, it's a whole different thing because you understand who you're speaking to, right? You get on a different level. You're able to deliver that presentation. And I tell them, you got to do an estimate. You're not going to know the numbers if you're doing a remodel while you sit there. So you're going to come back in 4 to 7 days. I'm like, okay, but at the estimate, you take your minute and everything else. Okay. So, we'll have this in 6 days. So why don't we set a time right now? Why don't Monday the 27th? Why don't we get together at 3 o'clock? Does that work for you? I'll be here and I'll give you the full presentation. I'm like, oh, okay. Now you've got a time set. They have an expectation. You're locked into that. You don't have the temptation to email them it, right? And a lot of times with my clients, I really have to kind of beat this into them because they want to just send it because they're busy. I'm like, you can't. You have to go present this because all these different elements in a kitchen or a bath or a whole house, you have to attach the value to it. Your presentation matters. They got to see something, right? And take them through it. And when I do that, Whitney, it is, you add 10, 15, 20% on your close rates. That's how much it goes up. That's massive when you're doing $200,000 jobs, $400,000 jobs. And now you have a 20% increase and above. That's amazing. You know what I mean? So all this stuff, when you start wrapping all this stuff together, you can see how, I'm going to use the word complex, like sales actually is.
Oh, it's very complex. Very complex.
Yeah, kind of well, and I'm glad we agree on that. And I think we've kind of said a lot of things, but when you look at this big picture, just what we've been describing so far, people might be a little bit like just, they're drowning because they write an estimate and they send it to them and they think they're done, right? So we may have done a little overwhelm here. Okay, so you got to talk them off the ledge now, Whitney. This is your job now. You got to talk them off the ledge from not wanting to do any sales at all. Okay, so again, in the beginning we talked about looking at the process, right? You walk through that kind of fine tuning the little stuff, the not so pretty stuff, but now the rest of this process. Like, I have to figure out what I'm trying to ask here. Taking the complexity of it, but the complexity is all broken down into simple things. Any complex system is built of simple systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have the simple systems first. So is that kind of your process too? Like, hey, we need to get these little things done and start to connect them. So let's say they're pretty, I'll use the word antiquated in their sales process. So there's a time factor to this, right? This isn't, hey, in 3 weeks, you're going to have the unbelievable sales system. You've got to kind of build these step by step, right? Is that kind of what you have to do?
So I always, what I tell them is like, one of my main missions is I'm here to make you dangerous. Like I'm here to make you dangerous, out there with your clients and make you more effective in how you can actually be able to close deals. So if I'm not doing that, then I'm not helping you, be able to grow because, there are things you can look at internally. There's ways to communicate with your customer and be able to understand the market. We have to talk in the words of how the client talks. Because they're not going to understand, a lot of the lingo that we use in our business. We got to talk the way they talk. But ultimately, I want to help make you a lot more dangerous. So I think that's kind of what I really want to be able to focus on, because some of them might have great products and services. They don't know how to pitch it or be able to close on it with the customer. So that being said, I do want to be able to simplify it, but if I don't know where they are, they're only usually going to tell me the things that they really want to be able to focus on, and it could really not be the pressing issue to be able to close more deals or streamline what they have internally. So it's sometimes just a little bit of repositioning, or sometimes it could be a wholesale change. It really doesn't. I don't really know until you go in and you kind of understand the infrastructure and how people operate. But it is overall really, it can be simple, but some people look at it and they make it a lot more complicated than it really needs to be. So
I was going to say, I like the thing you said about the language. Okay. I see this a lot. Too many people in business are speaking the inside baseball language. Okay. The customer has no idea from a BTU to whatever, right? You're talking about this stuff that's just over their head. And I always tell people a confused mind does nothing. They don't say no, but they also don't say yes. They just sit there because, and I'll cross over into marketing a little bit too. It's the same thing on their vehicles. and their marketing, you have to speak to the customer, not to your other HVAC buddies. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like they'll get it right. And it's huge,
100%.
right? You have to break it down so simple, because really what I like to explain is what you have three things you have: their pain, the problem, right, that you're there to solve. You have the solution, and then you have the outcome. Okay. So the pain, you want to know their pain. What is their problem? And you want to dig into their pain. You want to spend some time in their pain. You want to poke on the wound. Okay. You really want to make sure that they know their pain and that they know you know their pain. And then my picture in the center is like a padlock. That's your solution. They don't need to know how you're going to do it. You don't spend any time saying how you're going to do this. This is like a features thing, right? All the things it does to make it great, they don't care.
Yeah.
The next thing is the outcome. Okay. So what I do is I do like the pain scale at the doctor's office. The pain is a scrunched up number 10 face. The outcome, smiley face, sunshine, rainbows, the whole picture, right? That padlock in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The padlock in the middle is what they pay you for.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to talk about their pain then. And after we do this for people, this is what their life looks like. Now they have this and this, or their business, or whatever it is. They want to know the outcome, because that's a problem solved is the right outcome. They don't care how, right? If you're in incredible pain because your arm's chopped half off, and the doctor says, take these two things, the pain go away, you're not going to ask for the insert and the full, explanation of what's in these two things you give me. You're just going to pop them down so the pain goes away. So I try to get people in that kind of mindset. So we're talking pain and outcome. The how is kind of irrelevant, right? So people are way more intrigued by the outcome than they are the process. You need a great process.
They absolutely are. But
Right.
sometimes if the company does not know how the customer speaks, how they operate, or where their budget is, they're going to speak to what's comfortable to them. So that's why a lot of education needs to go through of like, hey, this is where they are. This is the funding. This is what they're looking for. If you need to be that translator, that can be very helpful to understand where things are. Like, for example, I was down at the U.S. Coast Guard this past Monday, and you could see there was some crisscrossing on a few items just on miscommunication. So I was like, all right, this is what everybody's trying to say. And you could just see got it. Like, that's what we're trying to say. Just like, hey, how do you look at like a go, no go decision if you're going to go after an upcoming contract? So I think it was just like laying out, like, if you're going to go after a bid, what do you look at before you actually go after? So it's like clearing the air. It's like, this is how, we actually communicate. And I think just clearing the air can be very beneficial so everybody's on the same page. So I think that can always be very helpful too.
Yeah, I think that's great. So I know it's all going to depend on the client, the potential client,
Correct.
but
Yeah, it's all on the client.
right. But you're talking research, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's research to be done. And this is where this is why lazy people don't close sales. Okay. Because they're not willing to do a little bit of research. We talked about a little bit on going through their process. That's one level of research. But again, looking at and I'm not the expert researcher by any stretch, but we really need, like when you're saying understanding their language, right, and how to speak to them, there has to be a level of research done on guys let's say you do a lot of defense stuff and everything else. You really get this. They use a part or a tool to do something else. Okay. Like they need to put this in there. They don't really understand what it is. They just know they need it. Okay. And without it, something doesn't work. So you're not going to break down how intricate and all the little details and how this thing is made so it fits in. That's not what they're concerned about. So you have to do the research to understand what's the application of the product, right? Whatever you're selling. Again,
you got to know it all. You got to know it all,
right,
because the competition already knows it all, and the customer knows that they can buy it from basically anybody. So why you? So I think it goes, but even if you're on the private sales, it's really why you. So it doesn't matter if you're buying board feet, if you're buying, you're buying spray foam, or if you're buying shingles, the access to so many items is out there. It really comes down to what differentiates you to getting what the client needs, not wants, what they need. And is there a compelling event around it too? Like if you're building a house, like what's the need? How do you align with what the client really needs? And I think differentiators, people don't really, I don't think, spend enough time on the differentiators, like what separates them, because you can look in any city, just go to like Google, type in, if you're a, say, general contractor, you can see all the people around you. They're no different. You walk a trade show floor. Sometimes it's just overwhelming. They all look alike. So what differentiates you can really be very beneficial.
Yeah. And I think back in the research stuff and the differentiation, it really is, I'm going to just reemphasize, it's the outcome. That's what's you're different. That's what's different is the outcome. Again, it's not, yeah, your process may be different, but it's because of that process, they get this outcome. And that's what the people are really looking for. That's what makes them feel good. That's why their need is to feel good, right? Feel good about the whole process. That's their need. Yeah, they want a new kitchen or they want this product, but what they need is to feel good about the process and the outcome.
And trust
when you get down to that. Exactly. Back to the trust thing. That's good. So yeah, I love it, Whitney. This has been awesome. Any final takeaways for anyone from the sales process? We covered a lot of stuff, and I'm forgive me if we've overwhelmed you. Anyone, you or anyone else. I kind of get rolling on this stuff, and it's a complex thing, but it can be broken down simply when you understand it, and it's just a game changer for a business. To bring a guy like you in to do this kind of work. Okay. And I know you do on kind of multi levels here, but I always try to emphasize people like you need this stuff. There's certain things you can skimp on and you can ignore it for a while, but like sales is not one of those. Okay. Because I don't know if anyone's ever been slow on sales. It's kind of important. When the jobs aren't coming in, you're not closing the deals, or they are coming in, you're not closing them, or one of your people isn't. We didn't even get into all that role play and all the other cool stuff you can do that I would do with people to make sure they're maintaining those higher close rates. But yeah, drop some pearls on us here to wrap this up.
Sure. I definitely think one of the most important things is when you lose deals, don't always blame it on price. I think you look at how well you knew the customer. When did you actually get engaged? What were some of the other issues? Because that is just like any athlete, when they lose a game or when a team loses a game, they're heading straight into film, probably after the coach makes them run a lot. But they're looking at film. They're always studying film to figure out what went wrong, who ran the wrong routes, who didn't catch the ball. The list goes on. The same approach should be taken, but it's also, people make decisions and they didn't choose you. If you knew the budget and you weren't able to make it, write that down. Or if you didn't know the customer had no idea, who you were, that is the problem. That can be mitigated, because if I'm a sales manager and I did not know the customer, and that was the issue, a actionable item that you can always give to your CEO would be like, hey boss, I'm having trouble getting to this customer. Can you help me get in there? Any CEO that I know, give it a direct action to go open a door, they will take that on because they know this is critical to continue to grow the business. But look at your losses and do not blame price, because people like to price because it's not a person. It's just something out there. So that's one of the last things. It could help you. It could really help you as you go into the next quarter.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best takeaway of the whole show here. You got just price isn't, to me, I tell people price is irrelevant.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you think you're losing because of price, you're all kinds of messed up. Okay. Because you don't understand the whole game at all. So, we don't compete on price ever. None of my clients are allowed to compete on price.
No, not at all.
We don't do it.
Yeah, one of the things I always will do is I will ask, even when I just get on after just, emailing them to contact them, I said, all right, you have a upcoming client. I said, all right, write down all the decision makers on a piece of paper. And are they in your phone? If they're not in your phone and you don't know who they are, then you got to work on that relationship. You got to work on that trust, because if they're not even in there, they haven't called you, you're not on a first name basis, you don't know where they golf, you don't know where they go to church, you don't know any of that, then that is what you really need to focus on. So that's a huge thing you need to advocate for spending time on, not just building out bids, because that's where you'll get all that information that you need to start winning, and over and over and over and over.
Yeah, and it's what I want to emphasize is there's time involved in this. That's why
It is.
sales cycles truly are a lot longer than you think.
There.
Unless you're specifically tracking them and you've got, 300, 500,000 sales to go, okay, I got the specific time now. That is incredible data that you want to use to perfect your sales system. But you're absolutely right on the relationship aspect. It's really great. We don't compete on price, right? We're always driving value. Okay. We do in-person estimates, right? Presentations, things like that. A lot of really good stuff today, Whitney. How can people get in touch with you, follow you? If you want to come and do sales training for them, if they're looking for that great sales trainer, how can they do that?
Yeah, no, and again, Richard, I really appreciate the time today. So they can reach out to me on my website. It's Cribworks, so CRIBSWORKS, cribworks.co. And they can also follow me on my weekly newsletter, which is called Hustle in the Darkness. So they can reach out to me on either weekly actionable sales newsletter on how you can take actual steps to win more business. So Hustle in the Darkness.
Love it. Who came up with that title?
Yeah, no, I really
Is that
like
yours?
things that we do in the darkness that nobody sees.
That's right. That's right. And that's another good one, man. Remember, it's the sale. All the work is done before you get there.
Yes.
Right. It's this, when you get there, you're going to close the deal. The work's been done. You've already laid out everything. You have a process. You've got your systems. You got your accountability. You know what's going on. Again, you know their language. So many good things in this. So if you weren't taking notes, you got to listen to it again. Take some notes during this. Whitney's brought some great stuff here to the show. And again, I appreciate it. Sales, it's your economic engine. All you want to do is you want to add horsepower to your engine. Okay. You don't want to gum it up and slow it down. So we're giving you some horsepower tips today, right? So you can go faster and longer. That's the whole idea, right? So awesome stuff. Whitney, again, thank you so much. And everybody, we'll see you on the next STS podcast. And don't forget, revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family. So if you want to see how I can show you at least $100,000 in hidden annual profits in less than 3 minutes, and not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed, just go to sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. See how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. Do it now.